What if a quiet girl with a notebook full of forgotten songs was asked to sing in front of the whole school as a joke? But when she opened her mouth, the room didn't laugh. It cried. Stay with us for a story of music memory and the kind of courage that grows in silence. If stories like this touch your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more emotional journeys filled with hope, healing, and unexpected beauty. Now let's begin. Single Dad's Girl was asked to sing at school as a joke, but her voice left the whole room in tears. The snow hadn't started falling yet, but the sky already carried that heavy silence. Iowa towns knew too well the kind that warned you it was coming. Jack Turner pulled his truck into the cracked driveway of their small yellow house just past 5 p.m. Headlights dim against the gathering gray. The porch light flickered to life as he stepped out, boots crunching the dry gravel lunchbox in hand. Inside, he knew she'd be waiting. Lily. He paused at the door for a moment, brushing the snow dust from his shoulders. Then he opened it and stepped into warmth and cinnamon. She was curled up on the couch in her usual spot, small legs tucked under her, like a folded fawn, a pencil in her hand, and a battered composition notebook on her lap. The edges were worn frayed like it had been read 1,000 times. Because it had. "Hey, sweetheart," Jack said, softening at the sight. Lily looked up and gave him a smile, small, like always but real. "Hi, Dad." He set down his lunchbox, pulled off his coat, and ruffled her hair as he passed. She didn't flinch, but her fingers tightened around the pencil. That notebook was her talisman, her shield. Jack headed to the kitchen, the scent of slow-cooked apples meeting him at the door. The crock pot hummed softly on the counter. She'd done it again, started dinner without being asked. 11 years old and already reading recipes like survival manuals. "Smells good," he called. "It's supposed to be cobbler, but we're out of brown sugar." Jack opened the pantry and confirmed it with a quiet chuckle. "We'll make do." That's what Turners do best. Back in the living room, Lily was erasing something. Jack leaned against the doorway, watching her without speaking. She wasn't like the other kids, not loud, not bold. Her teachers always said she was quietly exceptional, though sometimes with a tone that made Jack wonder if they thought she was too quiet, too strange. It wasn't her fault. The notebook on her lap had once belonged to her mother. Jack's heart gave a dull twist. He hadn't opened that thing in years. But Lily, she carried it like a second heartbeat. "You working on a new poem?" he asked. She shook her head. "I'm learning the bridge." He blinked. The what? The bridge in Mom's song. "Winter's Light." She turned the notebook, slightly revealing a page filled with scribbled notes and hand-drawn music bars. "I think I know what she meant with the 7th chord. It's supposed to feel like the first snow. Not heavy, just soft." Jack tried to swallow the lump forming in his throat. "That's beautiful, kiddo." She shrugged. "It's her song, not mine." Before he could say more, a vibration buzzed from the coffee table, Lily's school tablet. She glanced at it, then turned the screen toward him. A group chat. Lots of emojis. Lots of capital letters. "Mr. Dunn said they're doing a winter festival. There'll be music and stuff. They asked me to sing." Jack furrowed his brow. "They asked you?" "Well, Chloe said I should." She smiled when she said it. That didn't sit right. Chloe was one of those girls, performative kindness, all bright teeth and backhanded compliments. Jack had met the type. Lived through them even. "You think she meant it?" "I think she wants to laugh," Lily said simply. Her voice didn't crack or shake. She wasn't looking for pity. She was just stating facts. Jack stepped forward, crouching beside her. "Lily, you don't have to do anything that makes you feel like a joke. Not for them, not for anybody. But what if I'm not a joke?" Her eyes found his big and serious. "What if I try and it matters?" And just like that, Jack was back in that hospital room 11 years ago, holding a newborn with dark lashes and the tiniest lungs. His wife, pale and tired, had whispered, "Promise me you'll never let her hide." At the time, he thought she meant from grief. Now he wondered if it meant from the world. "I think," Jack said carefully, "that if you want to sing, really want to, we make sure they hear you for real. Not through a busted mic in a gym with bad lighting. We make it count." Lily looked down at her lap. "You still have the old PA system in the garage?" "I do." She closed the notebook. "Then I'll do it." And just like that, it was settled. But later that night, long after Lily had gone to bed, Jack sat alone in the kitchen, the notebook open in front of him. The handwriting on the pages was unmistakable, his wife's slanted and elegant, with little hearts dotting every I. There was a line in the corner of one song, "If I don't get to sing it, maybe someone will find it and feel less alone." Jack traced the words with a calloused finger. The notebook wasn't just a memory, it was a voice waiting to be heard. And maybe his daughter was ready to sing it. The next morning, the sky had finally broken open. Snow fell in hushed spirals outside Lily's bedroom window, blanketing the town in a kind of fragile quiet she always found comforting. From her bed, she could hear her dad in the kitchen humming a few off-key lines of Johnny Cash while frying eggs. It was his way of reminding the house that life went on, even in the cold. She sat up slowly, notebook clutched to her chest as if it had spoken to her in her dreams. Maybe it had. The melody of winter's light still echoed in her head, winding through the verses like a secret thread, familiar, aching, unfinished. She wasn't sure if it was her mother's voice she heard in it, or her own trying to find the shape of something bigger than words. Downstairs, Jack was plating breakfast when she slid into her chair. "Morning, superstar," he said with a crooked grin. She offered a faint smile, then unwrapped the notebook and set it on the table. "Can I borrow the old keyboard in the garage?" Jack blinked. "You mean the one that only plays if you hit it just right?" She nodded. "I want to figure out the chords, not just read them." He looked at her for a moment, then nodded. "You'll need gloves. Garage is basically Antarctica right now." They ate in easy silence, snow whispering against the windows. When they finished, Jack dug the keyboard out from behind a tower of paint cans and worn-out Christmas decorations. The keys stuck, and the volume knob was forever jammed on barely audible. But Lily smiled like he'd handed her a grand piano. She set it up in the corner of the living room, curled her fingers around the keys and pressed gently. The notes wobbled at first, thin, unsure, but then gradually they began to fall into place. Jack watched from the hallway, arms crossed. She had her mother's hands. Not just small and graceful, but deliberate. Every movement meant something. He didn't interrupt. He just let her play. Over the next few days, Lily came home from school, did her homework without complaint, then sat with the keyboard and the notebook for hours. Her voice, soft and unsure at first, began to find its footing. She wasn't trained, at least not the way choirs or coaches would expect, but there was something unmistakable in the way she sang. Something true. Jack fixed up the old PA system in the evenings. It had survived a dozen school carnivals and one regrettable attempt at karaoke night at the town diner. Now it would serve one more purpose. "You know," he said one night while adjusting the mic stand, "your mom once told me that singing isn't about being heard, it's about making someone feel understood." Lily sat cross-legged nearby, notebook in her lap, and looked up. "Did she sing a lot before I was born?" "All the time," Jack said, smiling at the memory. "In the kitchen, in the car, to herself, to you when you were a baby. She used to say the world was less scary when it had a melody." Lily's eyes dropped to the page. "I don't remember her voice." "You will," he said gently. "Maybe not like I do. But in here," he tapped his chest, "you'll know it." The next day at school, things shifted. When Lily walked into the music room for rehearsal, a few kids turned and whispered. Chloe, blonde ponytail, 2 white sneakers, and a smile like a knife waved. "Lily, ready for your big debut," she called, tone too sweet. Lily hesitated at the door. Ms. Ellery, the school's music teacher, stood at the piano, arms folded. She was a tall woman with short gray hair and eyes like polished stone. She'd never smiled at Lily, never frowned either. Just observed. "Come in," she said. Lily sat down quietly while the other kids laughed and chattered. Chloe shot her another look, a smirk this time, but Lily didn't react. She opened the notebook, stared at the music. She could do this. The rehearsal dragged on. Other students sang pop covers or holiday medleys, all energy and show. When it was Lily's turn, the room dipped into a hush, half anticipation, half something sharper. She stood, walked to the microphone, and adjusted it with hands that trembled just a little. "Whenever you're ready," Ms. Ellery said, voice neutral. Lily opened her notebook, took a breath. The first notes came out breathy. She faltered, started again. This time the melody wrapped around her like a scarf. She closed her eyes and let the words guide her. "When winter falls in silent snow, I'll leave my light where you can go." It wasn't perfect. Her pitch wavered. A note cracked. But there was something in it, a rawness, a need. Even the kids who had planned to laugh didn't. When she finished, the room stayed quiet for a full 3 seconds. Then Chloe clapped, slow, sarcastic. "Wow," she said. "Didn't even know that was a real song." Ms. Ellery didn't flinch. She simply said, "That'll be enough for today." Lily sat down without expression, but her fingers trembled as they held the notebook. Later, as she left the classroom, Ms. Ellery called out Lily. She turned. "You have a voice," the teacher said. "Don't let other people decide what it's for." Lily blinked. It was the first time she'd ever heard anything like approval in that voice. Outside, Jack waited in the truck. When Lily climbed in, he didn't ask how it went. He simply passed her a thermos of hot cocoa and said, "You want to rehearse tonight?" She looked out the window at the quiet snowfall, then back at him. "Yes," she said. "But this time, let's turn the volume up." The Turner house had always been quiet, but that week it sang. Not loudly, not the kind of singing that came through radio speakers or church choirs, but in a quieter, deeper way. Jack would hear it in the mornings while shoveling snow from the driveway. Lily, alone in the living room, softly repeating the bridge to Winter's Light. He didn't interrupt. He just stood outside, breath fogging, in the cold, listening to a voice finding its way out of silence. At school, though, the world was less forgiving. Rumors traveled fast in small-town middle schools. By Wednesday, everyone seemed to know Lily was singing in the Winter Festival, and no one could agree whether it was because she had talent or because Chloe and her clique had dared her to. In the hallways, some students gave Lily half smiles tinged with mockery. Others kept their distance, not wanting to be associated with the quiet girl who thought she could sing. But Lily didn't flinch. She carried her notebook close to her chest like armor, and walked with a kind of silent dignity that made Jack, watching from his truck at pickup, feel both proud and powerless. On Thursday afternoon, the last rehearsal before the weekend's festival, Ms. Ellery stood beside the piano in the auditorium, her arms folded as always, eyes scanning the small group of performers seated in the first row of the auditorium. "Lily," she said without preamble, "you're up." Lily rose, walking steadily toward the mic. The stage was colder than she'd expected, and the light coming through the auditorium's high windows made her feel exposed, as if every eye could see straight through her. She opened the notebook. Her fingers trembled just slightly as she placed it on the stand. "Sing the whole piece this time," Miss Ellery said. "Don't stop no matter what happens." Lily nodded. She took a deep breath and began. "When winter falls in silent snow, I'll leave my light where you can go." The words were softer than they'd been at home. Her voice was clear but restrained, the way a candle flickers in a room too large. Still, she made it through the first verse and into the chorus, her confidence growing with each line. "I'll keep it burning on the sill. A promise made, a promise still." Then came the bridge, the hardest part. She hesitated. In her notebook, her mother had written something next to that section. "Don't just sing it, breathe it." Lily swallowed, closed her eyes, and tried again. Her voice cracked barely, but she finished. When she opened her eyes, Miss Ellery was still watching, her expression unreadable. Lily stepped back from the mic, breath shallow. "Thank you," Miss Ellery said, then turned to address the room. Next. No applause, no nod, no comment. Lily returned to her seat, face blank, but inside something had shifted. Not from the singing, but from what hadn't been said. Later, as she was putting her notebook into her backpack, she felt a shadow pass over her. "Stay a moment," Miss Ellery said. Lily froze, then slowly turned around. The older woman gestured toward the front of the stage. She didn't speak again until Lily was standing right beside her. "You know," she said, not looking directly at the girl, "I've heard that song before. A long time ago." Lily blinked. "You have, yes. Though not in that form. It was unfinished then." Her gaze softened just slightly. "Your mother wrote it, didn't she?" Lily nodded, cautious. "She was in my music theory class, back when this school still believed in art as much as athletics." There was a pause long enough for dust to settle in the silence. "I remember her working on it during lunch breaks. She said it was a lullaby for someday." Miss Ellery's voice grew distant. "She never got to sing it at graduation." Lily felt her breath catch. "You knew her, I did. Not well, but well enough to remember how her voice filled this place in ways most don't." Her eyes flicked toward Lily, now sharp again. "You have her tone. but your phrasing is yours. That matters." Lily didn't know what to say. Compliments weren't things she collected. She usually didn't know where to put them. "She believed in quiet things," Miss Ellery continued. "So do I. But don't mistake quiet for weak. That song deserves strength. If you sing it, sing like you mean to leave it behind." Lily swallowed the lump rising in her throat. "Do you think I can?" The teacher didn't smile, but her answer came firm. "I think you already did. Once." That night back at home, Lily told Jack everything. About the rehearsal, about what Miss Ellery had said, about her mother's song being more than just a family secret, more than just grief with a melody. Jack listened quietly, a mug of tea growing cold in his hands. Then he stood and walked to the closet. After rummaging through an old shoebox, he returned and handed Lily a faded photograph. In it, her mother stood on the same auditorium stage, barefoot, holding a mic with both hands. Her eyes were closed and her head tilted back slightly, like the notes were lifting her off the ground. "She sang Winter's Light that night," Jack said, voice gravelly. "Only once. It wasn't finished. But people remembered." Lily stared at the image. "Why did she stop?" "She was pregnant with you. She said it changed the music. She wanted to save it. For you." They sat together in silence for a while, the kind that holds more love than words. Then Lily opened her notebook, flipped to a blank page, and began to write. The town didn't know it yet, but the Winter Festival that year wasn't going to be just another school recital. It was going to be the moment when a girl with a quiet voice and a long-held notebook turned a mother's unfinished dream into a song the whole room would remember. Friday came cloaked in silver clouds and silence. The snow had held off all week, like it too was waiting for something. But by mid-morning the wind changed. By noon, flurries danced through the schoolyard, and by the time the dismissal bell rang, the sky had collapsed into a quiet blizzard. Jack stood beneath the awning of Lily's school, shoulders hunched, beanie pulled low, watching clusters of children scatter into SUVs and minivans. His truck rumbled at the curb engine, warm defroster working overtime. When Lily emerged, her backpack looked heavier than usual, not because of books, but because of whatever she was carrying inside her. She climbed in, cheeks red from wind, and didn't speak for the first mile. "They're saying we might get a foot of snow by morning," Jack offered, glancing at her as he turned onto Sycamore Drive. "Will the Winter Festival be canceled?" Her voice was too calm to be casual. "Maybe. Principal Dawson said they'll decide in the morning." She didn't answer, just stared out the window, watching snowflakes race each other toward the frozen ground. Jack hesitated. "Hey, it's okay. If they cancel it, that doesn't take anything away from what you've already done." But Lily shook her head, slow and sure. "I want to sing. I'm not afraid of them anymore." Jack felt something crack open inside him, not like glass, but like ice melting. That evening, while the snow piled thick against the porch steps and wind moaned softly around the edges of the house, Lily sat cross-legged on the floor with her mother's notebook. The room was warm golden from the lamplight and filled with the soft hum of the old keyboard Jack had tuned that morning. Her voice had changed over the week. It wasn't just louder, it had grown roots. When she sang now, Jack felt the floorboards listen. At one point, she paused mid-verse, frowning. "It's still not right," she said. "The bridge, it's supposed to feel like it breaks and rebuilds all at once." Jack stood behind her, arms folded. "How do you fix something that's not broken?" She looked up. "By making it yours." He smiled and walked to the garage. 15 minutes later, he returned with a narrow wooden box, the old condenser microphone he'd saved from his days running sound at the town's community center. It still worked barely, but it had heart. "Try it with this," he said. Lily's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "Only on Fridays and when it snows." She plugged it into the ancient PA system. There was a buzz, a pop, and then her voice filled the room, not louder, but warmer, rounder, like it had found its way home. When she sang the bridge again, Jack closed his eyes. "If I can't walk beside you now, I'll leave the song to show you how." The moment passed between them like breath on glass. That night, just before bed, the phone rang. Jack answered in the kitchen while Lily brushed her teeth. "Mr. Turner." "This is Principal Dawson." Jack straightened. "Everything all right? We've made the decision to move forward with the Winter Festival tomorrow. Weather's bad, but not dangerous yet. We'll start early and finish before sundown. We didn't want to disappoint the kids. Jack exhaled. She'll be there. She's the closing act, you know, Miss Ellery insisted. After he hung up, he went to tell Lily. She stood at the foot of the stairs in her pajamas, already guessing the answer from the look on his face. She didn't squeal, didn't jump up and down. She just smiled a quiet, luminous thing and said, "Then I have to practice one more time." The next morning, the town woke to a world buried in white. Plows scraped the streets by dawn, salt trucks hissed along the main roads, and school custodians worked double time clearing the parking lot. By 9 a.m., families arrived bundled in coats and scarves, stamping snow from boots and shedding gloves at the entrance to the school auditorium. The stage lights glowed amber against the dark velvet curtains. Folding chairs creaked beneath layers of winter gear. Children fidgeted. Parents sipped from thermoses. The room buzzed with anticipation and peppermint. Lily stood backstage with her notebook clutched to her chest, staring at the edge of the curtain. She could hear the hum of the crowd, the laughter of kids, the soft shuffle of shoes on tile. Her stomach curled into knots. Ms. Ellery approached without a sound, as always. "You're on in 20 minutes, she said. Lily nodded, throat dry. The older woman reached into her coat pocket and pulled out something small, sleek, round silver. A pendant. "I wore this the last time I performed on this stage," she said. "Your mother gave it to me after graduation. Said it belonged to someone who knew how to hold silence." She placed it in Lily's hand. "Today it belongs to someone who knows how to break it." Lily blinked fast, her fingers curling around the cool metal. "Thank you." "Don't sing for them," Miss Ellery said. "Sing for her." Lily took a deep breath. The stage manager gave her the signal. She stepped into the light. The auditorium hushed. Somewhere in the second row, Chloe snickered behind her hand. Jack, seated just beyond her, looked only at his daughter, eyes steady, mouth pressed firm, as if he knew what it had cost her to stand there. Lily opened the notebook, and then she closed it. She didn't need it anymore. Her voice when it came was quiet, but the kind that made people lean forward. It wasn't perfect. She missed a note in the second verse. Her hands shook slightly, but it didn't matter, because when she reached the bridge, something happened. "If I can't walk beside you now, I'll leave the song to show you how." The crowd didn't move. Not a cough, not a rustle, just breath and stillness. When she finished, there was a heartbeat of silence. Then the room erupted, not polite applause, but the kind that rose from somewhere real. Ms. Ellery stood at the back, eyes glistening. Jack had tears in his beard. And Lily. She stood under the lights, holding nothing but that pendant and her own voice. The song had found its way home. By the time Lily stepped off the stage, her knees were trembling. Not from fear, at least, not anymore, but from something deeper, something she couldn't name. The kind of trembling that comes after you've carried something heavy a very long way and finally set it down. The applause still echoed behind her as the next act took the stage, a cheerful fifth-grade class singing Jingle Bell Rock in slightly off-key unison. But Lily heard none of it. She stood in the shadowed wings, catching her breath, her mother's pendant still warm in her hand. Jack met her backstage a minute later. He didn't say anything at first, he just opened his arms. She stepped into them without hesitation. "I'm proud of you," he whispered against her hair. "More than you'll ever know." Lily didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her silence said everything. They sat together in the back row after that, huddled close in their coats, watching the rest of the festival unfold. There were recitals, a tap dance routine that nearly turned into a pile-up, and even a surprise solo from Principal Dawson, who played the kazoo with more enthusiasm than talent. But the real moment had already happened. Still, not everyone had moved on. In the far corner of the auditorium, seated alone near the exit, a woman with dark eyes and a soft beige coat sat frozen in place. She hadn't applauded. She hadn't moved since Lily sang. Ms. Ellery saw her from the stage and felt her breath hitch. After the festival ended, while families gathered in the hallway with cookies and paper cups of cider, Ms. Ellery made her way through the crowd, her cane tapping softly on the linoleum. She approached the woman in beige slowly, carefully, as if she were a ghost that might disappear if startled. "You came," Ms. Ellery said. The woman looked up, her eyes shining with tears. "I almost didn't." "You stayed in the back," Miss Ellery noted, not unkindly. "I didn't think I had the right to do more. She sang your song, Marin." The woman closed her eyes. "It wasn't mine. Not anymore." "Not since." She made it hers, Miss Ellery said gently. But she carries your voice and your courage. Marin nodded once. Then her gaze drifted toward the hallway where Lily and Jack stood surrounded by well-wishers. She doesn't know me, Marin whispered. She knows your words. The teacher laid a hand on Marin's shoulder. Come, speak to Jack if not to her. But Marin shook her head. Not yet. I just needed to hear it. One last time. She rose slowly, wrapped her coat tighter, and slipped out the side door into the snow. Miss Ellery stood watching after her, snow swirling against the glass behind her like whispers. She didn't call out. She didn't follow. She simply turned and walked toward Jack. He was speaking to a group of parents, half smiling, uncomfortable as always in crowds. But when Miss Ellery stepped beside him, he straightened. She was here, she said simply. Jack stiffened. Marin, Miss Ellery nodded. She stayed in the back. Didn't speak to Lily. Didn't speak to me. She didn't need to, Miss Ellery replied. She came to listen. Jack looked down, jaw clenched. His hand gripped the paper cup of cider, too tightly denting the rim. Why now, he muttered. After all these years. Why now? Because grief has its own calendar, she said. And sometimes it takes a child's voice to reset the clock. Jack stared across the room at Lily, who was now laughing softly with a girl from her class, one who used to ignore her. The notebook for once was tucked away in her backpack. She was just a kid again, a little braver, a little lighter. She's stronger than both of us, Jack murmured. She's what happens when love is given room to breathe, Ms. Ellery said, then looked him in the eye. You gave her that, and Marin. She gave her the rest. Jack nodded slowly. The anger he'd carried for years like a coiled wire in his chest loosened just a little. As the crowd began to thin and families filtered out into the snow, Ms. Ellery stepped up to the small makeshift stage and tapped the mic gently. The feedback squealed slightly. Before you go, she said to the room, I'd like to thank each of you for being here, not just to witness the performances, but to recognize something more important than notes or costumes or applause. The room stilled. Today a song was sung that was never meant to be forgotten. And it wasn't perfect, but it was brave. It was real, and it reminded us that the quietest voices sometimes carry the greatest truths. Lily looked up, eyes wide. Miss Ellery smiled. To those who carry the light forward, thank you. The audience clapped gently, not out of habit, but from somewhere sincere. Later, as Jack and Lily walked home, because they chose to walk, even in the cold, Lily looked up at her father. Was she there? Jack paused. Then he said carefully, she was. Lily didn't ask more, just reached for his hand. They walked in silence, boots crunching in fresh snow, two shadows long behind them in the winter light. And in Lily's coat pocket, her mother's pendant pressed against her palm like a heartbeat. The song wasn't over. It had only just begun. The wind had eased by morning, leaving behind a clean, sparkling quiet. The snow clung to rooftops like icing, and every tree along Main Street stood dressed in white. The world looked soft still, but beneath that stillness, something had shifted. Jack noticed it first. He was on the front porch with a mug of coffee, watching Lily scoop bird seed into a tray beneath the maple tree. She was humming to herself, absent-minded content. For the first time in a long time, her voice wasn't wrapped in hesitation. It just was, like air. Jack hadn't told her everything. Not yet. He didn't know how. All night he'd lain awake staring at the ceiling, replaying what Miss Ellery had said, that Marin had come, that she'd heard the song, and left. It should have made him angry again, but it didn't. It made him tired. Later that day, while Lily worked on homework at the kitchen table, Jack drove into town. The snowplows had already cleared most roads, but the sidewalks were still half buried. So he parked near the post office and walked the last block to the old bookstore tucked behind the church. The brass bell above the door jingled as he entered. The store hadn't changed in years. Same dusty shelves, same overstuffed armchair by the fireplace, same woman behind the counter, Laura, who'd run it for 2 decades and remembered every customer by name, even if they only came in once a year. Jack nodded a greeting. Is she still renting the upstairs apartment? Laura raised an eyebrow. She left early this morning. Did she say where she was going? She didn't. Just paid cash and asked me to leave the key for the next tenant. Laura studied him a moment. You okay, Jack? He hesitated, then nodded. Just trying to understand something. Laura softened. She watched the whole performance, didn't blink once. He wasn't surprised. Not really. But hearing it confirmed left a strange ache in his chest. Back home, Lily was curled up with the notebook again, flipping pages with care. She looked up when he entered. "Was that your old mic they used at the festival?" she asked. Jack nodded. "Yeah, still worked, huh? It made everything feel bigger, like the words had somewhere to go." He sat beside her at the table. "Can I ask you something?" She shrugged. "Sure. When you sing it, the song, what do you feel?" Lily didn't answer right away. She tapped her pencil against the table, then looked at him. "Like I'm not alone." Jack swallowed. "That's exactly how your mom wrote it." Lily tilted her head. "Dad? Yeah, do you think she hears it?" He paused, then answered honestly. "I think some songs go farther than we can imagine. I think maybe they reach the people who need them most." Lily smiled faintly. "Even if they're not ready to come back yet." Jack looked at her sharply. "What do you mean?" She didn't meet his eyes. "I saw her." He blinked. "You saw who in the auditorium?" "After I sang." She was sitting near the exit. Beige coat, dark hair. She looked like me. Or maybe I looked like her. Jack's breath caught. "I thought I was imagining it," Lily said. "But then I saw her crying, and then she left." Jack leaned forward. "Why didn't you say something?" "Because I didn't want to scare her away." His heart twisted. "Sweetheart, that wasn't your job." "She should have." "It's okay," Lily interrupted gently. "If she was there, it means she heard it. That's all I needed." Jack stared at her, this child who'd somehow grown into something bigger than both her parents. That evening, after Lily went to bed, Jack found himself standing in the garage holding the box of old recordings he hadn't opened in years. Inside were cassette tapes, scribbled lyrics, and a photograph of Marin with a guitar in her lap, smiling at someone behind the camera. He hadn't looked at her face in nearly a decade. Now it stared back at him like time had never passed. He sat down, plugged the ancient tape deck into the wall, and hit play. Marin's voice crackled through the speaker, clear, unguarded, unedited. "If I don't get to sing it, maybe someone will find it and feel less alone." Jack closed his eyes. She had known, even then. The next day, he drove to the bookstore one more time. Laura handed him a small envelope. "She left this," she said. "Didn't say for who, but I think you'll know." He took it without speaking, walked back to the truck, and sat behind the wheel staring at the sealed flap. It read only, "To the voice I never finished." Inside was a single page, handwritten, familiar slanted script, a final verse. "If silence takes what time can't give, I'll leave behind the notes I lived. And if you sing them through your tears, I'll know you kept me through the years." At the bottom, just a name. M. Jack folded the page carefully, then tucked it into the notebook waiting in the passenger seat. When he got home, Lily was playing a soft scale on the keyboard. He sat beside her, handed over the page without a word. She read it slowly, then again. And when she looked up, her eyes were glassy, but she smiled. "Looks like she left room for one more bridge," she whispered. Jack nodded. "Want to write it together?" She reached for her pencil, and they did. By the time the weekend melted into Monday, the buzz around Lily's performance had rippled through town like sunlight on snow. Teachers stopped her in the hallway with gentle nods and words like "beautiful" and "brave." A cafeteria worker slipped her an extra chocolate milk. Even the principal made a point to mention her name over the morning announcements, stumbling slightly through his usual monotone, but smiling all the same. But Lily wasn't thinking about applause anymore. She was thinking about the final verse, about the letter, the handwriting, the truth that her mother, absent, silent, unreachable, had still been listening. It haunted her, but not in the way nightmares do. It was more like the aftersound of a song, echoing, clinging, asking not to be forgotten. That night after dinner, Lily stood in the middle of the living room with her mother's notebook in one hand and the finished lyrics in the other. The room was quiet, save for the ticking of the old wall clock and the low hum of the furnace kicking on. Jack sat on the couch, his hands folded in his lap. "Dad," she said softly, "can I record it?" Jack looked up. "The whole song?" She nodded. "Start to finish, with the new verse." He studied her for a moment, and in her eyes he saw something he hadn't expected: certainty. Not for show, not for school, for herself. He stood. "Come with me." In the garage, the old microphone sat in its stand wires, coiled like sleeping snakes around a second-hand laptop and a dusty speaker system Jack had salvaged from the church basement 3 years ago. He hadn't recorded anything since Maren left, but the equipment still worked. And tonight so did he. Lily stepped in carefully, her breath visible in the cold. Jack plugged in the space heater and adjusted the mic. It took a few minutes to warm up both the gear and their nerves. "You want to do a practice run first?" he asked. "No," Lily said. "If I think too much, I'll forget why I'm singing." Jack didn't argue. She stepped in front of the mic, slid her headphones on, and opened the notebook to a page that no longer needed to be there. She already knew the words, but still she held it like a keepsake. Jack hit record. There was a beat of silence. "Then when winter falls in silent snow, I'll leave my light where you can go." Her voice was calm, not perfect, but not reaching for perfection. It held the trembling beauty of someone telling the truth for the first time out loud. She moved through the verses with the quiet grace of memory, hers and her mother's, and when she reached the final newly written section, she closed her eyes. "If silence takes what time can't give, I'll leave behind the notes I lived. And if you sing them through your tears, I'll know you kept me through the years." Then the last note floated out, long, aching, beautiful. Jack sat frozen behind the glass of the garage window, staring at the screen, the audio wave rolling gently to a stop. He didn't hit pause right away. Neither of them moved. Then Lily pulled off the headphones and stepped back, her hands trembling just slightly. "Well," she whispered. Jack cleared his throat. "It's her voice," he said, "but it's yours now." She smiled, soft, tired, full. He burned the file that night, not onto just one CD, but 3. One for Lily, one for the school, and one more carefully labeled Winter's Light, final, which he placed inside a small envelope. The next morning, Jack walked into town alone. Snow crunched under his boots and the air stung his nose, but it felt good. Awake. At the post office, he handed the envelope to Mrs. Jensen at the counter. "Certified mail," he said, "to the last address on this label." Mrs. Jensen read it, paused, looked at him. "You sure?" Jack nodded. "Yeah, she needs to hear it." He didn't need a return address. Back home, Lily was already halfway through designing a small booklet for the song, "Something to Give to Miss Ellery," who had, in Lily's words, tuned more than my pitch. She included a dedication on the back page for those who stayed, for those who left, and for the voices that keep us singing. That afternoon, Jack received a call from the town's community center. It was the head of the youth music program, a tall, excitable man named Curtis Langley. He spoke so quickly Jack could barely catch up. "Mr. Turner, just got word about your daughter. Her music teacher sent over a recording. We played it. Twice, then 3 times. We'd like to invite her to perform at our spring showcase. It's mostly high school students, but we'll make an exception. We have to." Jack leaned against the kitchen counter, stunned. "You're serious, dead serious," Langley said. "We've got guest artists, local sponsors. It's a real event. And frankly, she'd steal the show." Jack smiled slowly. "Let me talk to her." When he told Lily, her eyes went wide. Not with fear, with wonder. "I thought it was just for us," she said. "It still is," he replied. "But now, it can be for them too." That night before bed, Lily opened the notebook one last time. She flipped past every old song, every memory-stained page, every handwritten verse left by a woman she'd barely known but now fully felt. And on the final page, the one still blank, she began to write a new melody. Something warm, something waiting. Because her mother's song had ended, and now it was time to write her own. The letter arrived on a Wednesday morning, tucked between a grocery flyer and a water bill. Jack almost missed it until he noticed the thick envelope with gold-embossed lettering, his name written in clean, confident script. "Young Voices of Iowa, Spring Showcase Selection Committee to Mr. Jack Turner, parent of Lily Turner." His brows lifted. Inside, a trifold brochure spilled out all satin paper and bold fonts, celebrating exceptional young talent across the state. At the bottom of the letter, beneath a paragraph filled with glowing adjectives, was the line that made his hands pause mid-fold. "We would be honored to include Lily Turner as our featured youth soloist." Jack stood motionless in the kitchen, the letter open like a door in his hands. Lily was upstairs, sitting cross-legged on her bedroom floor, not singing today, but scribbling lyrics in the margins of a library book. She didn't even hear him come in. When he held out the letter, she blinked at it, then at him, then back to the letter. She read it once, then again, and again. You said it was a local thing, she whispered. Just the community center. It was, Jack said, voice low. But Ms. Ellery sent the recording further. To the state. He nodded. Without asking me. Lily looked down at the brochure, its golden stars and bright stage lights. Her fingers tightened. They want me to sing in Des Moines in front of a full house, accompanied by a professional pianist. Full production. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She sat very, very still. I don't think I can, she said quietly. Jack crouched in front of her, voice gentle. Why not? Lily's gaze fell to the floor. It's not mine, not really. Mom wrote most of it. The words, the melody. People liked it because it was hers. That's not true. Yes, it is. It's her song. I just finished it. Jack waited a moment, letting the silence settle before he answered. Lily, he said, do you remember the old tree behind the church? She nodded. The one with the bell tied to the lowest branch. Your mom and I carved our initials in that tree when we were 17. Every spring someone paints over the bark to keep it from rotting. And every year the tree grows, and the paint flakes off, but the initials are still there. You can't erase something that deep. You can only grow around it. He reached out gently, placing a hand on hers. She planted the roots. But what's growing now? That's all you. Lily stared at the invitation for a long time. Finally, she folded it carefully and slid it back into the envelope. I need to think about it, she said. Jack nodded. Of course. She didn't mention it again that day, or the next, but something shifted. That Saturday, while Jack was repairing a neighbor's furnace, Lily biked to the community center alone. She stood outside the building for a full 15 minutes before walking in. Curtis Langley was there, tuning an old upright piano in the side room. When he saw her, his smile lit up his whole face. Lily Turner, he beamed. The girl with the song that's had half the staff crying all week. She flushed. I just wanted to see the stage. He gestured dramatically. Be my guest. It wasn't fancy, just a wooden riser and a few mounted lights, but it felt bigger than anything she'd stood on before. Lily walked to the center, stood still, and imagined the room full faces. Lights breathless waiting. She felt the familiar twinge of fear, but alongside it something else. Readiness. That night at dinner, she slid the envelope across the table. I'll do it. Jack looked up from his plate. I want to sing, she said, but not just Winter's Light. I want to write something new. Just mine. Jack leaned back slowly, taking in the words. Then he smiled. Then we'll make it happen. Over the next 2 weeks, the house transformed into a quiet flurry of creation. Sheets of lyrics covered the coffee table. Post-it notes appeared on bathroom mirrors with phrases like bridge, docs, hope, and add soft chord under third verse. And every night Lily sat at the keyboard and explored. She didn't try to sound like anyone. She didn't mimic recordings. She just listened to herself, to her feelings, to what hadn't yet been said. Jack offered advice only when asked. He knew when to stay out of the way. One evening she called to him from the living room. Can you listen? He sat on the couch. She cleared her throat. This is the new one, she said. It's called Open Window. Then she played. The first verse was gentle, almost spoken. The melody didn't reach for grandeur. It settled into something quiet and true. The chorus, though, lifted, like wind catching a kite. If you're out there and afraid, I've left the window open wide. There's a song upon the sill and a light you left inside. When she finished, Jack didn't clap. He didn't need to. He just said, that's yours. And it was. Not borrowed, not completed, not inherited. Hers. That night, Lily slipped the old notebook into her desk drawer, gently closed it, and turned to a blank journal. A new voice, a new song, and for the first time, a beginning all her own. The town thawed slowly, reluctantly, as February leaned toward spring. The snowdrifts along Main Street began to recede, revealing sidewalks again. Slush puddles gathered at every curb, and sunlight lingered just a little longer each evening. With it came a renewed sense of movement. Kids played outside in rubber boots. Neighbors reappeared on porches with mugs of tea, and life creaked open like a door unstuck. Lily's days changed too. Instead of slipping quietly out of school and biking straight home, She began staying late in the music room, sometimes with Miss Ellery, sometimes alone. She no longer kept her lyrics hidden in the old notebook. Now she carried a fresh one, its pages clean, and already curling with use. She had started wearing her mother's pendant too, not tucked away but visible, resting just beneath her collarbone like a silent promise. One afternoon, Ms. Ellery found her at the piano bench, head bowed, playing the chorus of Open Window in slow, deliberate rhythm. "You've added a counter melody," the teacher said, stepping in quietly. Lily nodded without turning. It felt empty before. Miss Ellery stood beside her, folding her arms. "You're not afraid of space anymore." Lily glanced up. "Was I before you used to hide between notes? Now you let them breathe." The praise landed gently like a leaf falling in still water. Lily let it soak in. Ms. Ellery leaned on her cane, then added, "There's something else I want you to consider." Lily blinked. The community center Ellery continued. "Curtis Langley is offering weekend mentorships for young composers. He's creating a program sponsored by the city so kids who can't afford private lessons still have access to real training." Lily straightened. "You think I could help? I think you're exactly the kind of voice other kids need to hear." Lily looked down at the piano keys. "I don't know how to teach." Miss Ellery's lips curved faintly. "You don't have to. Just share." By that weekend, Lily found herself sitting in a folding chair at the community center, beside 3 other teens and a 6-year-old named Sam, who kept trying to turn the keyboard into a drum set. Curtis Langley paced in front of them like an overexcited ringmaster. "Okay, team," he beamed. "Today's goal, find a story in sound. Don't think about being correct. Think about being honest." Lily hesitated at first, fingers hovering above the keys. Then she remembered her father's words. She planted the roots. "What's growing now? That's you." So she pressed the first note, a simple G, then an E minor, then a suspended fourth that lingered in the air longer than she expected. She didn't speak. She let the chords speak for her. When she stopped, the room was still. Sam blinked and whispered, "That sounded like rain." Curtis grinned. "Exactly. That Sunday back home, Jack made pancakes for dinner. He'd been watching her all week. Something in her posture had changed. Not just confidence, but ease. She moved like someone who no longer had to brace herself for the world. "How's the mentorship going?" he asked, sliding a stack onto her plate. "It's fun," she said. "And kinda loud." Jack chuckled. "That Langley kid's a lot of energy. He let me help Sam write a verse yesterday. He wanted it to be about spaghetti." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Ambitious. Turns out it rhymes with confetti." She smirked. Then after a beat, she added more softly, "I think I like being around people who love music, just to love it." Jack nodded, his voice quieter. "Feels like home, huh?" Lily looked up. "Yeah, not the kind with walls. The kind that sings back to you." That night, she sat at her desk writing again, not a song this time, but a short note. "Ms. Ellery, thank you for hearing me before anyone else did. You helped me find the part of my mom I didn't know I still carried. I hope I can do the same for someone someday. Love, Lily." She slipped it into an envelope, sealed it, and placed it next to her school bag for Monday. In the living room, Jack flipped through the mail. Another envelope from Des Moines had arrived, this one outlining rehearsal schedules, hotel arrangements, and a program insert for the spring showcase. He read through it slowly, then froze when he saw Lily's name in bold, featured youth soloist, Lily Turner, Open Window original composition, underneath it a second line, "In memory of Maren L. Jensen, songwriter-dreamer." Mother Jack didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The next morning as they drove to school, he glanced at Lily in the passenger seat, earbuds in fingers, tapping quietly on her jeans. He asked, "You nervous?" She pulled one earbud out. "A little. You want me to go with you?" "To the showcase." She looked at him like he just asked if the sun planned to rise. "Of course," she said. "I want you in the front row." Jack smiled and gripped the steering wheel a little tighter. Outside, the trees were beginning to bud, barely visible but there. A quiet promise that the hardest parts of winter had passed. And somewhere between the chords, the community center, and the old pendant that now hung with quiet dignity at Lily's throat, the girl who once whispered melodies into an empty room had found something bigger than a stage. She had found a place to belong. The Des Moines Civic Auditorium loomed like a sleeping giant as Jack pulled into the parking lot. It was bigger than anything Lily had ever seen in person. Stone columns, glass-paneled lobby, wide front steps gleaming from an early morning rain. She stared through the truck's windshield, not saying a word. Jack shifted into park and looked over at her. She was in her best jeans and a soft blue sweater, the silver pendant resting just above her heart. "You okay, kiddo?" Lily's fingers were laced tightly in her lap. "I think so." He waited. I feel like if I mess this up, I'll lose something I didn't know I had." Jack turned to face her more fully. "Lily, listen to me. You already have everything you need. You're not here to impress anybody. You're here because something inside you is strong enough to be shared." She swallowed. "But what if they don't hear it?" "They will." His voice softened. "And if they don't, that's on their ears. Not your voice." Lily nodded, but her hands kept trembling. Jack opened the door and came around to her side. As he helped her out of the truck, he placed both hands on her shoulders. "Just sing like you're standing in the living room, like you're singing to her." Lily blinked hard, then took a deep breath. Inside, the auditorium buzzed with nerves and activity. Young musicians moved in and out of rehearsal rooms. Pianists warmed up. Singers murmured scales behind coffee cups. Jack signed Lily in while she stood near a row of chairs watching a tall girl rehearse her aria with eyes closed, one hand raised like she was summoning the sky. A woman in a headset and clipboard approached. "Lily Turner." "Yes," Lily said, voice steady. "We'll have you run your sound check in 20 minutes. You'll be number 8 in the lineup. Here's your pass. You need anything, I'm Dana." She gave Lily a reassuring smile before disappearing behind a curtain. Lily sat notebook in hand, not the old one, but the new one, the one she'd started after finishing Winter's Light. She flipped through pages filled with verses, doodles, half-formed ideas. She stopped on the song she'd chosen to perform. "Open Window." Outside, the rain started again. When her name was called, she stepped into the wings of the stage. The lights were down, but even in the dimness, she could feel the vastness of the room. Hundreds of empty seats waiting. Dana met her at the edge of the stage. "When you're ready, sweetie." Lily stepped out. Her boots sounded too loud against the hardwood floor. A single mic stood at center stage. A pianist, Mr. Hewitt, a soft-spoken man with wild eyebrows, waited at the baby grand. She looked into the darkness beyond the lights and imagined Jack sitting somewhere in that sea of seats. She imagined her mother, too, maybe just beyond reach, maybe closer than she'd ever know. Then she nodded at the pianist. The intro began, gentle chords, slow and steady. Lily stepped to the mic. "If you're out there and afraid I've left the window open wide." Her voice was breathy at first, the nerves evident in the way her fingers curled around the mic stand. But by the second line, something inside her shifted. She wasn't thinking about being judged anymore. She wasn't trying to remember the words. They were already inside her. "There's a song upon the sill and a light you left inside." She let the pauses stretch naturally. Let the melody rise and fall like it did when she first wrote it in her bedroom, late at night, heart full and unsure. The stage faded. The seats disappeared. There was only the song. When she reached the final chorus, her voice opened. "If you listen through the dark, you will hear me in the air." The last note lingered soft and steady. Silence. Then slow applause from the panel of judges seated near the front. Polite, professional. But Jack, watching from behind the side curtain, knew better. They'd been moved. Lily stepped back from the mic, nodded a quiet thank you to the pianist, and walked off stage. As soon as she crossed the wings, her shoulders sagged with relief. Jack was there in 2 strides, pulling her into a hug before she could say a word. "You were incredible," he murmured. "I was shaking," she said into his chest. "I know," he said. "I could see it, but I didn't stop." "No, sweetheart, you didn't." Later, they sat in the lobby waiting for results, sipping hot chocolate from the concession stand. Kids came and went, chatting about auditions, trade schools, scholarships. Lily listened quietly. Finally, Dana reappeared, clipboard in hand. "Lily Turner." She stood. "Judges would like to speak with you." Jack gave her an encouraging squeeze on the shoulder as she walked across the room. Inside the panel room, 3 people sat behind a long table, an older woman in a red scarf, a bearded man with wireframe glasses, and a tall, sharp-eyed woman with a conductor's baton in her hair. The woman in the scarf spoke first. "Lily, your song was beautiful, evocative, honest." "Thank you," Lily said, voice small. "We've heard a lot of technically perfect pieces today," the tall woman said, "but yours had soul and courage. You didn't just sing, you told us something." The man in glasses nodded. "We'd like to offer you a position as a guest performer in our April program. Not just the youth showcase, the full performance series." Lily's eyes widened. "But I'm only 12. "Yes," the woman said, "and very rarely that's exactly old enough." She left the room 10 minutes later in a daze. When she told Jack, he whooped loud enough that 2 volunteers startled and 1 pianist dropped her sheet music. Lily blushed, laughing in spite of herself. That night on the drive home, Jack asked her how she felt. She looked out the window. The sky had cleared. Stars blinked behind tree branches and the moon spilled gold over the highway. "I feel like I just opened a door I didn't know was there," she said. "And what's behind it?" Jack asked. Lily looked ahead. "More music," she whispered. "And maybe more of me." Jack smiled. "Then we're headed the right direction." And they were. It wasn't the trophy. Lily would remember that later, long after the lights dimmed and the applause faded, when the program pamphlet curled at the edges and the glitter lettering on her nameplate began to flake off. She would remember other things, the warmth of the stage lights on her skin, the way the grand piano echoed just slightly in the rafters, the tremble in her knees that disappeared the moment she sang the first line. She didn't win the top prize. That went to a boy from Cedar Rapids who played cello like he'd been born with a bow in his hand. The judges gave Lily something different, the Most Moving Performance Award. She held the plaque in her hands, backstage fingers, brushing over the engraved title as if trying to understand what it meant. Jack knelt beside her, eyes shining. "That's better than first place," he said. "That means they felt you." Lily blinked at him. "Do you think Mom would have been proud?" He didn't answer at first. Then quietly, she was. He said it as if it were a truth he could feel, not imagine. Not hope for, but know. Back home, they placed the award on the mantel beside a framed photo of Marin from her early days, hair windblown, eyes full of something Lily now recognized in the mirror. A quiet hunger to say something real. Later that week, Lily stood at the front of the music room at school as her classmates clapped, and a few teachers missed it up behind their clipboards. The principal gave a short, heartfelt speech about courage and community, and then gestured for Lily to say a few words. She stepped up, cheeks, pink fingers tight around the microphone. "I just wanted to say thank you," she began, voice steady. "Not just for listening when I sang, but for letting me be someone I didn't even know I was yet." A hush fell. "I used to think I had to sing perfectly," she continued. "Now I know I just have to sing honestly. And I hope if there's someone else in this room with a song inside them, you'll share it. Even if it's small, even if it's quiet, especially then." There was a pause, then came the applause. Not polite, not obligatory, real. After the assembly, Miss Ellery met Lily at the back doors. "You've changed the school more than any banner ever has," the teacher said. "You've given us all something we forgot we needed." "What's that?" Lily asked. "Permission to be vulnerable." They hugged, brief, warm, unspoken gratitude between generations. That night at the kitchen table, Lily sat across from Jack, her notebook open beside a half-eaten grilled cheese. On the table sat a letter from the Iowa Youth Music Fellowship, congratulating her on her invitation to a summer workshop in Chicago. Full scholarship, travel included. Jack read it twice before speaking. "This is the kind of thing people dream about, Lily." "I know." "You nervous?" She shrugged. "A little, but mostly I want to keep writing. Not just performing. I want to write songs for people who don't know how to say what they're feeling." Jack nodded. "Your mom once said a good song is just a feeling someone gave a name to." Lily smiled. "Then I want to name all of them." She spent the next 2 weeks writing music not just for herself but for others. She helped Sam, her mentee at the community center, finish a song about his goldfish. She wrote a lullaby for a third-grade teacher expecting her first child. She even composed a short wordless piano piece entitled it, "For the Days You Can't Speak." Her songs became bookmarks in other people's lives, quiet bridges between moments, and people began to send her letters, some from towns she'd never heard of, thanking her for Open Window, which had made its way online after the showcase and was now quietly making rounds among parents, teachers, and even hospice workers. One letter from a woman in Nebraska read, "My sister passed in December. She left her daughter behind, and I've been raising her alone. We played your song one night when the house was too quiet, and she whispered, 'That's how Mom sounded when she tucked me in.' Thank you for giving her a place to grieve that didn't feel like goodbye." Lily read it with trembling hands. She turned to Jack. "How does something so small go so far?" He smiled soft, because it was never small. On the last Friday of the school year, the town held its annual spring fair. Cotton candy stalls, lawn chairs in the grass, a makeshift stage beneath a string of lantern lights. Families gathered as the sun dipped low, laughter blending with the sizzle of kettle corn and the creak of wooden benches. Lily stood backstage once more, her guitar slung over one shoulder, fingers wrapped gently around the pick. This time she wasn't nervous. She stepped into the warm glow of stage lights, adjusted the mic, and smiled into the crowd. "I wrote this one for anyone who ever sat quietly in the back row," she said. "It's called The Song That Stayed." She began to play. There's a hum that never leaves you, even when the house is still. It's a whisper in the hallway. It's a seat you always fill. She saw Jack in the front row, arms crossed, smiling in that way that only dads can, equal parts pride and disbelief that time had moved so quickly. And somewhere in the back, a woman in a beige coat stood beneath the lanterns. She wasn't crying this time. She was singing along. When the final note faded into the evening, Lily bowed not deeply but gently, like closing a door she knew would always stay unlocked. Because some songs don't end. They settle in. They stay. The first snow of the new season arrived late. It came not with fanfare, not with gusts or blizzards, but gently like a memory returning home. The kind of snowfall that drifted down in silence, blanketing the rooftops and the sidewalks of their quiet town with a softness that asked nothing in return. Just presence. Just peace. Lily stood at the window of her bedroom that morning, watching it fall. The glass fogged slightly as she exhaled. Her guitar rested against the wall behind her, and her desk was cluttered with half-finished lyrics, thumbed through sheet music, and a letter from the Chicago summer program, this time inviting her back as a junior mentor. She was 13 now, still young, still learning, but different. The girl who once hid in music had grown into the girl who gave it away quietly, courageously, and people had listened. Not because she asked them to, but because what she offered couldn't be ignored. Downstairs, Jack was tinkering with the ancient toaster, again cursing under his breath in the affectionate way only he could. Lily laughed to herself and pulled on a sweater, slipping her mother's pendant around her neck. She hadn't taken it off in months. Before heading down, she opened the bottom drawer of her desk. Inside was the old notebook, the one with worn corners and fading ink. Marin's notebook, the beginning of everything. Lily took it out and ran a hand across the cover. Then for the first time in a long time, she flipped to the very last page. It was blank, still waiting. She picked up a pen. "Dear Mom, your song brought me here, but now I think I've found one of my own. I hope I'm making you proud, not just for singing, but for listening, for staying kind, for remembering. Thank you for the light you left." She folded the page gently and closed the book. Downstairs, Jack poured coffee into his chipped mug as Lily joined him at the table. He looked up and grinned. "Well, if it isn't the town's most famous songwriter," Lily rolled her eyes. "Dad, that was months ago. Fame doesn't expire that fast in a small town. I saw someone at the hardware store humming Open Window the other day. It's practically our new state anthem." She laughed and stole a piece of toast from his plate. "You always exaggerate. Only when I'm right." They ate in easy silence, the kind that belongs to people who have weathered storms together. Outside, the snow continued its quiet descent. After breakfast, they walked together through town to the community center. Every window was strung with lights, and inside the staff was preparing for the annual winter music recital. This year, Lily wasn't performing. She was hosting. She had a clipboard, a schedule, a badge that read Mentor, and 5 students aged 6 through 10 who looked at her like she held the secrets of the universe. Jack watched her from the folding chairs at the back of the room. The little girl who once sang in whispers now knelt beside a trembling 8-year-old at the edge of the stage, whispering, "You've got this." Just find the first note, and the rest will follow. When the girl began to sing a bit off-pitch but brave, Lily didn't watch from the wings. She sang along from the floor, mouthing every word like a promise. The audience clapped. The girl beamed. And Lily moved to the next name on the list. After the recital ended and the chairs were being stacked, Jack approached her. She was wrapping microphone cables with a practiced rhythm. "You know," he said, "this whole place feels different now." She looked up. "How do you mean it used to be a building where people performed? Now it feels like a place where people grow." Lily smiled, maybe because someone finally left the window open. He chuckled and slung an arm around her shoulder. "I'm glad I didn't miss it." "Miss what?" "The moment you became her." Lily tilted her head. Your mom," he said. "But also, more than her, yourself. Someone who took what was unfinished and turned it into a beginning." She was quiet for a moment, then said softly, "I think she stayed just long enough to see it." Jack didn't ask what she meant. He didn't need to. They both knew about the woman who'd stood in the back row, who had left without a word, then returned with a verse, a whisper, a gesture of love stitched with silence. Some goodbyes weren't endings. They were bridges. That evening, just as the sun dipped low and the town square lit up in gold and amber, Lily stood on the front steps of the community center and looked out over the gathering snow. In her hand, she held a candle. Others joined her. Students, parents, neighbors. A song drifted through the crowd, one she hadn't written but had made her own. "I'll keep it burning on the sill." A promise made a promise still. As the final note faded, Lily turned to Jack and whispered, "That song, it stayed." He nodded, "Because it belonged here." She looked around at the people, at the snow, at the life that had built itself quietly around her. "No," she said, "because it belonged to everyone." And in that moment, with the candlelight dancing on their faces and the winter world hushed around them, it didn't matter where the music had started. It mattered that it was still being sung, that it would keep being sung, because kindness, like song, doesn't end with the final note. It echoes, it lingers, it stays. We'd love to know where you're watching from. Tell us in the comments below and share what part of Lily's story touched your heart the most. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories that celebrate kindness, second chances, and the quiet strength we all carry inside. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. We're truly grateful to have you here. Until next time, stay kind and keep the light burning.